Peter Gibson, what has been the experience so far in Australia with drones around airports?
Well, we do get the occasional report of drones near airports. Just a couple of weeks ago, there was one over the parking and taxiways at Perth Airport. We've also had reports from pilots as they approach and depart airports of drones in the vicinity. And we've got a prosecution being prepared at the moment against someone who was flying a drone near Sydney Airport.
And so what are the penalties?
Well, the penalties range from fines, which can be in excess of $10,000, or if you cause a serious safety risk to an aircraft, you could face up to 5 years in jail.
And so in light of this incident at Gatwick, do those penalties sound about right to you, or do they need to be revisited?
Look, I think the penalties are there, and they're pretty substantial. What we've got to do more effectively, obviously, is make sure we've got a way of keeping on top of who's operating drones. That's why we're going to bring in a registration scheme, making sure that people understand their responsibilities for flying a drone. That's why we're going to bring in a compulsory licensing scheme, and working more on the technological solutions, things like geofencing to stop drones being flown near airports, and surveillance technology, so that we can identify where people are flying drones, who are flying the drones, and of course ping them if they do the wrong thing and issue those penalties.
Yeah, so tell us a bit more about those the devices you just mentioned. So there are devices or setups that can actually be used to prevent this happening. There's something called the drone shield out there that can detect and disable drones.
Yeah, there's a number of technological solutions. One is in the software of the drones themselves, which is geofencing, which just means they won't fly near airports or other locations where you don't want a drone flying.
But are there already so many drones out there without that software that they would be able to circumvent that?
Sure, well that is an issue, that's right. And then you've got what you were mentioning, which are so-called drone guns, which some of our police forces have had approval to use for things like the Commonwealth Games, which can disable or bring down a drone back to where it's being flown from. And then we've got surveillance technology, which we're about to start using in Australia to identify drones being flown in the wrong places, identify where they're being flown from, get the serial number of the drone, and obviously use all that information to track back, identify who was doing it, investigate and issue penalties where appropriate.
Yeah, so Peter, can you tell us a bit more about that surveillance technology? You might not be able to tell us everything, but how does that work? How does that kind of identify the drone and disable it?
Yeah, well, that's something new. We're about to start using it in Sydney in the near future, and around airports is obviously one location. Sydney Harbour's another, because we get a lot of drone violations around Sydney Harbour. And yeah, it allows you to pinpoint the drone itself, where the drone's flying, so you can see it's flying in the wrong place in restricted airspace or near an airport. You can see where the drone controller is, so you can see where the person is who's flying the drone, so you can go and find them, and it also in many cases gives you the serial number or the identity number of the drone itself. So using all that information, hopefully you can put together a package of information to be able to issue penalties, and in serious cases, as I say, seek prosecution before the courts.
Yeah, so you've got kind of the air traffic controllers in their base with their system set up at one level. Do you foresee a time when there's kind of another kind of radar closer to the ground that's picking up things like drones?
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. Where you're using drones in commercial operations, trials are going on in Australia at the moment for this sort of thing, things like home deliveries. You have an unmanned traffic management system, which is kind of, as you say, like the air traffic system for aircraft, that keeps the drones safely separated from each other and other objects. And that sort of technology may well need to be rolled out in the future as drones become more ubiquitous in cities and towns, being used for things like deliveries. So yeah, look, there's a lot of technology coming that's going to better manage the safety of drones. However, we do need to stress right here today, it is the responsibility of everyone flying a drone to understand the drone safety rules, follow those rules at all times, and they are things like never fly within 5.5 kilometres of an airport, never fly over an airport, never fly anywhere near an aircraft, because that's posing a risk to the aircraft and the people in it, and that's just unacceptable.
And the altitude limit in Australia, is it 500 metres?
Yeah, the altitude limit in Australia is 120 metres, so keep your drone under that at all times, again, to keep it away from aircraft, and of course never fly closer than 30 metres to people on the ground.
Yep.
They're all there just to put a safety buffer between your drone, people, property and aircraft. We want people to have fun with drones, but they've just got to do it safely.